16 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour, and Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program. Chris Mays of the Brattleboro Reformer. Feels like longer than 2 weeks for some reason, Chris, so welcome back. I don't know what happened there, but I just lost track of time, I guess.
Yeah, been a long 2 weeks, I guess.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just been a long 2 weeks, but good to have you back here and talking about all the different things you're writing about for the Reformer. People see that every day if they get it delivered to their newspaper box like I do, or maybe they go to reformer.com and follow along. But either way, hopefully they've been paying attention to all the things happening here in the town of Brattleboro that you've been covering over the past week. A lot of stories coming out of last Tuesday's select board meeting, none more important than the appointment of a new town clerk to replace Annette Cappy. Hillary Francis, the new town clerk here. What do we know about Hillary?
Well, she's worked on a few campaigns, Clean Water Action, Working America, and League of Young Voters, and now she's looking to kind of change up her pace and advocate for voting on a more non-neutral level. And she's currently the executive assistant of the procurement and merchandising department at CNS.
Right.
It's kind of a mouthful, but
that sure is.
I get it. And she went to Antioch where she got her master's degree. I think she kind of fell in love with the area then. She also has a bachelor's degree from George Washington University.
This has all been, at least to me, and I feel like I pay attention at select board meetings and kind of follow along with your stories about what's going on. I don't remember a whole lot of talk about the process of looking for a new town clerk. Did they talk about the process last Tuesday by which they came to their decision on Hillary?
Yeah, they did. But it was kind of funny, you know. Annette announced her retirement. Yeah. Everyone was like, "Oh wow!" And then all of a sudden, now we're at appointment of the new town clerk. But yeah, there were two different committees. One was an advisory committee, and one was some other type of committee, and the two worked together. They had a 9-1 vote in the positive for Hillary.
Okay, so the process has been probably going on for about as long as we've known Annette is retiring at the end of the year.
Yeah, there were town officials involved as well as residents, and they came up with a recommendation that seemed to please almost everyone.
Yeah, well, that's great news. Hillary, was she present at the meeting on Tuesday? I actually was covering a soccer game, so I didn't get to watch.
Yes, she was.
Okay,
she was.
And so her comments at the meeting.
She just kept saying thank you. She seemed really appreciative of the appointment. There were 2 finalists out of 8 candidates, and there was a strong field, Peter Elwell said. So I think that's the town manager.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think she was feeling really, really happy. And then I talked with her after the meeting and also on the phone the next day, and she continued to feel really grateful, and she was excited about taking on the position.
Yeah, we've all been there where you apply for a job and then you get it, and that feeling of gratification, but to do it out in public for a position like this, right, where she has to actually go before the town and the town leaders and say, yeah, I think all I'd be able to do is say thank you as well at the meeting.
Yeah.
What about the select board? What kind of comments did they make about Hillary on Tuesday night?
They were really pretty quiet. It was pretty much Peter Elwell talking about her and how the process went, but they seemed happy with the way the process went.
Good. And I saw a tweet, somebody asking after you announced it on Tuesday night if Hillary Francis was related to town planner Rod Francis, and she is not.
That was the first question I asked the next day, because I was curious too. I just didn't think to ask her right at the meeting. I was kind of just getting her phone number and photo.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you actually had a conversation with Hillary the next day as well?
Yes.
So talk a little about what you learned about her one-on-one that you didn't learn at the select board meeting Tuesday night.
Well, the one thing she didn't say at the meeting was the challenge that she's going to find, which is stepping into Annette Cappy's shoes. You know, she's been there for, 28 years?
28 years.
And she's just like, yeah, it's going to take some time for people to get used to me to get used to people. And she looked forward to having a month of overlap with the two. So she'll be helping at the elections in November, but then she'll start full time in November 29th, and then Annette will leave on December 30th, I think it is.
Right, yeah, a little bit of a month overlap there, and probably good that it's all happening after the election. I happen to be in the municipal building last week after the announcement was made and asked, what that meant for Annette to her. And she says, well, I'm just, my head's to the ground right now trying to deal with all this election stuff. But
That's
I know
exactly what she said to me, too.
yeah, that's exactly where she's at right now, 2 weeks away from voting here in, well, not just in the town of Brattleboro, but everywhere. So good for Hillary. Looking forward to seeing her at the meetings as well as the representative town meetings and all the other things that a town clerk does. And congratulations to her on that. Another thing that happened at the select board meeting on Tuesday was an update on pay as you throw. Since they've gone to every other week collection with the weekly curbside composting, weekly recycling pickup, some of the data they shared at the select board meeting seems like it's been pretty positive.
Yeah, they've seen a huge increase in composting throughout the 3 years that they started it. So they're pretty happy with the results.
Yeah. Did they talk a little about what they do now to refine it? Where are we at with participation? I'm sure that not everybody in town right now is taking advantage of this opportunity.
I think they're expecting that to increase a little bit more, but they were pretty much just happy with where it's at right now. They didn't really talk about ongoing efforts, but I'd expect a little bit more education here and there, and just people kind of catching on that, hey, if we don't want our garbage to stink, we got to throw it in the compost.
And if we don't want to pay as much for the bags that we're paying for now, that's a way to do it as well. Did they talk at all about cost savings or anything like that?
I think they're looking at it being in the neighborhood of $106,000 for changing to the biweekly schedule for garbage pickup.
Outstanding stuff. Well, we'll have to see how that goes as they go into the budget planning, right? That'll come up again then. Something else that'll come up in the budget planning is the police fire facility as they continue to roll out different parts of this project. Now, you had a story in today's paper which kind of goes back to a couple different meetings last week, the select board meeting and then the development review board meeting. Turns out you are in reality at the Brattleboro Reformer going to become tenants to the town pretty soon, huh?
Yeah, they're expecting to have the lease agreement at the next select board meeting. I think it's on November 1st.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's the expectation.
No, the next meeting is not November 1st.
What is it?
It's the following week. We were just talking about this off air.
Okay,
right?
yeah, right, yeah.
we should check on that, but I'm pretty sure the next select board meeting is November 8th, is the same day as election day.
Okay,
so
yeah.
we'll see. Because second and fourth meeting or first and third, we better check this off the air. We shouldn't be doing this on the air. But Chris Mays, my guest here in the studio, and we'll get our story straight during the break and be back with more on Green Mountain Mornings. 36 degrees outside at 21 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Chris Lenois, continuing my conversation with Chris Mays of the Brattleboro Reformer. We've got our story straight now. Select board meetings in Brattleboro happen the first and third Tuesdays of the month. So yes, next Tuesday is a select board meeting. You were right, Chris. I was wrong.
Yes.
Here, we have it on tape now. We have it on audio, BCTV recorded. I made a mistake this time. There we go.
Yeah, there's so many meetings to keep up with. It's like I don't know.
and with the first happening on that Tuesday, it is November 1st. I think that confused me a little bit. But so back to that point, you think that next Tuesday will be when they approve the lease for the town to take over the Brattleboro Reformer building at Black Mountain Road?
Well, for a lease with the Reformer, that would start once the purchase goes through, which is expected in the beginning of November.
Right, but the vote itself on that will be something that takes place next Tuesday, you think?
It could be, because 2 select board meetings ago, they were expecting that to be the day.
Right. So, and I know one piece of outstanding business with regards to the building itself at 62 Black Mountain Road was the state doing an assessment on some of the things, and that came back all clear?
Well, they're expecting everything to be good with that, yeah.
Okay, so they haven't gotten official word on that yet, but they feel comfortable enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So that concludes our Brattleboro business for today. Let's move over to the Deerfield Valley now, because you've had a number of stories there, and I know you're excited to talk about snow, you being a snowboarder and living over there in the Deerfield Valley. Your story on Monday's front page about ski resorts psyched for snow. Did it snow all the way down on Saturday night? I know that they got snow up north, but did you have snow all through the Deerfield Valley on Saturday?
Yeah, it did. We were actually, my girlfriend and I were over at my editor Bob Audette's house for a bonfire for his son's birthday.
Oh, nice.
And my girlfriend kept saying, "We got to get back. It's snowing. The roads might be bad, you know." And I got a little car with front wheel drive, so she was all nervous. No snow tires yet. But when we got back, there was some snow.
There was some snow there. Well, I know Marlboro had mostly sleet. A friend of mine was up there Saturday night. I was out at a soccer game at the Brattleboro Union High School campus. All that was there was rain.
Yeah.
It was very cold, but certainly good news, a sign of things to come. You spoke to the folks over at both Stratton and Mount Snow about their expectations. They're going to fire up the snow guns pretty soon, huh?
Yeah, they said as soon as the temperatures will allow, they'll go. Yeah, I woke up the next morning with in my email there were photos from Mount Snow, you know, so they were all happy, and I said, "Oh, look, Stratton has photos too." So I talked to both of them.
Yeah, did they give a sense as far as outlook? Is it still too early for them to talk about like season pass sales being up or down or anything like that? I mean, do we have a sense of what the winter tourist-wise is going to be like this year?
No, there was no mention of that just yet.
Right.
They are predicting a snowy weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be a good one out there. And certainly Hermitage Club, a story that you've been following as they try to build this hotel at Haystack Mountain. They're looking forward to the snow. Regardless of having this hotel done or not, certainly having people in the valley looking at different things helps them. I was curious about this story. It's on the towns section of Monday's paper because the Hermitage Club, the basic story was their Act 250 permit was delayed for a third time. But you spoke to them and they didn't seem, well, actually, they seemed kind of happy about it.
Well, they said we're down to a few minor details. I think they're trying to stay positive because, you know, the last two times they said, "Oh, I think we're going to get it this time. I think we're going to get it this time." And they need this approval of their master plan permit to move forward on construction of this 93-unit hotel and a bunch of residences up there. So
what's left? What questions is it the Environmental District Commission number 2, right? This is under the Agency of Natural Resources. What are some of those unanswered questions?
Well, the big thing I realized is there are no more requests for studies or information from experts. I think everything can kind of be done in-house at this point. So I kind of understand what they were talking about when they said we're down to a few minor details. They need some boundary definitions between property they just unloaded and property they still own. They also need a sworn affidavit from the company founder, Jim Barnes, saying he nor his family members do not have any intention on developing in those lands they just unloaded. And they also want a response from the Hermitage Club to a letter from residents who are saying they're still using the airport property, one of the properties they unloaded, to have vendors and other people come and pick up paychecks.
Don't we need to use air quotes around unloaded, right? Isn't this some sort of like sideways transaction as far as these properties? Hermitage Club didn't unload these to a point where they don't have control over these properties anymore. I seem to recall.
No, they say they do. Yeah.
They say they've ceded control over those properties?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They say they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. And they want one of the other things the Environmental Commission wants to see is all the documents related to the sale of those properties.
Right. Now, they according to your story, they're going to get all this together by tomorrow, by Wednesday, was the timeline that they thought they'd do it. So what happens next? If they get all that together, what happens next with this project?
I think that they'll either open up the hearing again to talk about it, or they might have a ruling.
They might just rule. I was wondering that if there was going to be another public meeting, they could legally just rule without another public meeting.
I think so, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see on that. The other story that coming out of the Deerfield Valley, and this is kind of ongoing too, Wyndham Southwest Supervisory Union getting their Act 46 plan rejected by the state. So there was a meeting recently, probably the first meeting actually, that you wrote about last Wednesday, figuring out where to go next with their plans to do this. They had this idea of a side-by-side district, right? Can you re-explain what their plan was that was rejected?
Yeah, Wilmington and Whitingham have already consolidated their schools, so they were thinking of having them be this bigger district and then having Reedsboro, Halifax, and Stamford attached to it.
Right. Basically doing nothing, just saying this is what we are and this is what we're going to go forward with Act 46 was my sense of why it was rejected. I imagine the mood was not so pleasant at this meeting.
I wasn't at the meeting.
Oh, okay. You were getting reactions afterwards?
But yeah, it took a while to get in touch with the superintendent, and he said there is some frustration, and he just keeps working on revising the documents, the articles of agreement, and sending it to the state for review.
So they've already sent a revised plan up to the state?
Well, they not officially. They can do it unofficially, where they just ask for some comments and feedback, and they're going to have another meeting in November. I forget the date, but anyone could come, but it's going to be primarily about the Wyndham Southwest.
Yeah. So what do we know about what they're planning to do to placate the state, to make it feel like it's a more agreeable situation than what they had proposed?
Well, there were some questions that were unanswered, of what the public's thoughts were on it, because they really haven't presented the plan to the public.
Oh, so it really comes down to process, not necessarily that their plan to do what they were doing, which is basically have the Twin Valley district that they have now in these side-by-side districts, that could still be something that gets approved by the state?
Well, there are other parts to it too. They wanted to see if there was any interaction with other districts nearby or alike, and they didn't see any of that in the plan because it was just all supervisory union-based schools.
Right. It'd be interesting. I mean, this now, when you talk about that vote happening in November, or the next presentation, I should say, happening in November, that'll be after the elections. We'll have what we know, whoever the new governor is going to be, and new members of including over in that area. Some of the representatives could change with the race between John Moran and Laura Sibilia. So it could be a whole different world that they're dealing with afterwards. It's probably for the best that they're waiting until then to figure out what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
So closing here with a story that I know is personal to you, but the story you wrote about on Thursday about James Banslaben. And I talked a little bit about that also with the Commons because Jimmy, as Randy called him, I didn't know him that well, but certainly somebody that was known to everybody in town, including yourself at the BCTV when he was there for the Selectboard meetings.
Yeah, before I started covering Brattleboro Selectboard meetings, I saw him at a few community events, and he always introduced himself and talked about, working at the studio and working on news events, and I always kind of knew him. And then once I started covering the board meetings, we interacted every time. And, he'd always talk about jokes. He'd always say, "You're amazing, you know that?" Because my name is Maze, But I can't say I recall him ever saying, "Have a great Vermont day." And that's what everybody kind of remembers about him. But
right.
He always did, for me, he always had a smile on his face. And I can believe it when Kate O'Connor, vice chair of the select board, says he acted as an ambassador for the community, just welcoming people in and showing them around.
Yeah, well, I thought your story about him, Thursday's paper front page, did him justice. A nice photo of him and the memories that you were able to gather and do. Thanks. I thought was a really nice tribute to James. And people should go online, check that out, reformer.com. You've got other stories coming up this week, I'm sure. Give us a tease about what else you're working on.
I went to a Bellows Falls United Church event where they were talking about how they could be helpful in the refugee program here in Vermont.
Oh, you went to that? Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, we'll wait till next time to talk about that. But I was reading that story about the preview of it, and it seemed like a really nice thing as far as, because it's not something that's really impacting us here directly in our community. This is something about what's happening over in Rutland. So tell us a little about what was talked about at that meeting and how they can support something happening over there on the western side of the state.
Well, the simple answer really is by donation and by advocacy. They were saying if you could get this information relayed about the vetting process and how it's not as troubling as some people might believe.
All right. So we'll look forward for that story. And then we'll see you in 2 weeks because next week is a select board meeting in Brattleboro. Thanks for your time
Sounds
this morning,
good.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Reformer.com, the online home for your hometown daily newspaper. We will be back to wrap up this edition of Green Mountain Mornings after these messages.